A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video in which I covered some of my criticisms of SuperCell's newest game, Squad Busters. Now, although a couple of comments disagreed, this video clearly struck a nerve with a ton of long-time SuperCell fans agreeing that the game was clearly pay to win from day one and gets boring quickly. As some of the commenters pointed out though, it's not just Squad Busters which has issues when it comes to this sort of thing. Clash of Clans has also been getting worse and worse over time, and the recent Builder's Apprentice update has proven this point even further. I think it's clear to see that SuperCell is becoming greedy after seeing a drop in revenue last year, which has caused them to panic and work on more ways of squeezing even more money out of their player base, which might end up having a less than desirable effect. But why are so many people leaving Clash of Clans after all these years? Well, to work this out, let's look at exactly what's been going on with SuperCell, the creator of Clash of Clans. It goes without saying that they are still a hugely successful games company, and they have been for over 10 years, but they have been plagued with one big issue. No matter how many games they dropped or how many ads they ran, the numbers weren't really going up. Although they're profitable, and have been for years, SuperCell has had struggles with declining revenue for a long time. Finally last year they realised it was time for a switch up after their earnings report showed a decrease in profits. This switch up mainly involved making more money, pretty obvious right? And sure, that's sort of the whole purpose of a business, but how they went about doing this is where it's going to cause some problems in the long term. SuperCell were faced with three main options. A. Get more people to play existing games. B. Make a new actually good game to put them back on top. Or C. Milk as much money as possible out of the people who haven't left yet altogether. Now they did actually try all three. However, C ended up being the best idea for them from a financial standpoint. In a panicked state, SuperCell quickly rushed out a ton of new egregious monetization measures in several of their games, with the most financially successful being Brawl Stars. In fact, less than halfway through 2024, Brawl Stars has already made more money than in the whole of 2023. Of course, this made SuperCell super happy, but what about the fans? Well, all of this extra money came from a mix of more players, but also more of a cash-grabbing mentality from SuperCell, which in the games industry is measured with something called ARPMAU or ARPMAU. This stands for the average revenue per monthly active user. The higher your ARPMAU is, the more money you're making per download, which is a very, very important metric, especially when it comes to paying for ads in games and things like that. And boy oh boy is SuperCell good at increasing this number at the cost of just about everything else. Brawl Stars' big consistent earner has always been the Brawl Pass. It's the shop item which gives players the best value and also gives them a reason to actually grind out the game, making it a big win-win for SuperCell. At the moment, you've got the basic Brawl Pass, which in the UK costs $7.99, and there's also the Brawl Pass Plus for $11.99. You used to be able to buy Brawl Passes with gems, however this is no longer the case, meaning no matter how many gems you've saved or earned in the previous pass, you're no longer able to access the pass as a free-to-play player, making progressing way more difficult for all the F2P users. There is also the fact that almost every time a new brawler drops, it's massively overpowered for the first couple of weeks before it finally gets nerfed back to reality. But this process of releasing a new brawler so powerful that it's almost game breaking is almost a monthly occurrence at this point, with each new drop bringing in millions or even tens of millions of dollars in revenue at a time. It's no accident. Every time Brawl Stars releases a new brawler and it's really, really overpowered, it's like, oh, sorry, we didn't playtest it enough. No, they deliberately do it because they make so much money every time they release one of these new brawlers. They're going to keep doing it. It's not going to change anytime soon because genuinely, I believe SuperCell make at least 50 million a year just from this single fact. This significant optimization of their monetization strategy undoubtedly made all of the execs at SuperCell very happy indeed, but not so much the players. Many felt pretty severely disadvantaged without paying for anything in-game, which made them feel almost forced into either quitting or just caving in and paying for passes and shop items. But as I say, the execs were probably over the moon with how Brawl Stars has been performing financially in recent times thanks to these changes. So what would you do if you've just discovered the secret to making an extra couple of $100 million with very little effort in a game? Repeat it, of course, and that pretty much brings us up to scratch with the current state of all SuperCell games. Battle passes left, right and centre which you cannot buy with gems, overpowered new drops which are almost game breaking, and almost everything can be buffed with just a couple of dollars thrown in SuperCell's direction, ideally on a recurring basis. It's now at the point that the average Clash of Clans player spends several dollars per year on the game, with the small percentage of truly committed players often spending well over $100 a year once you include passes, gems and skins. Bearing in mind a new AAA game for PC or console is usually around $50 to $60, spending that much on a free mobile game definitely seems a bit insane. But it's easy to see how a big time Clash of Clans player could end up spending so much. Let's use the new Builder's Apprentice update as an example. If you hand over 6,500 gems or about $65, you can fully upgrade this new guy, and he will speed up the build time on a single building by a few hours, and you can do this once per day. Bear in mind that's for a single building, and you've got 5 or maybe 6 builders. But what about if he's already busy or on cooldown? Don't worry, you just give the goblin some more gems and he'll finish everything else off for you. The funny part about that is that when the goblin came out, it made rushing buildings with gems a lot cheaper than it used to be, so a ton of players spent up all their gems on that, only to find out shortly afterwards that they needed another 6,500 gems for the Builder's Apprentice. Very clever. But since the apprentice only works on a single building, my prediction is that they add multiple apprentices which all need to be leveled up with gems. You can do the maths on that one. This could mean that in order to stay competitive in the future, you might need to spend over $300 on builders apprentices, plus the pass, plus some gems for various other benefits. Before long, I wouldn't be surprised if top players end up needing to spend at least $500 on an account just to even stand a chance of keeping up with the competition. With a game with a progression path as lengthy as Clash of Clans and constantly new things to buy, there's actually an unlimited amount of money you could spend on the game. And I found this fact super interesting. If you wanted to gem your way up to a max Town Hall 16 base, so just max everything, it would now cost around $140,000. There are very few other games on the planet where it's possible to spend even close to this amount. Obviously barely anyone does do this in Clash of Clans, but the fact that you can do that is an interesting thought. But Clash of Clans also has some pretty big issues plaguing the game itself, which have been causing players to leave for good over the years, with one of the biggest being the economy shift. You see, despite what the gems system might suggest, SuperCell does want everyone to be constantly progressing, even free-to-play players. And that's what keeps people coming back. What this means is over time they make lower Town Hall levels way easier to rush through, whilst the higher Town Halls can take months or even years to max out. They do this by constantly lowering the cost of lower level buildings and walls, making them easier to buy, whilst massively increasing the build times for top level players. What this economic policy has done though is the opposite. I'm sorry it sounds like a political video at the moment, I'm going to try and rush through this bit. Players are constantly left annoyed when they have just spent tens of millions on upgrading walls and buildings, only for SuperCell to yet again make these buildings even cheaper in subsequent updates. What this has led to is a ton of players around, Town Hall 12, 13, 14, feeling demotivated, who no longer see the point in working on upgrades, since they know if they simply wait, everything is going to be cheaper in a few months' time. But the sad reality is that this deflationary measure that SuperCell started adding into Clash of Clans, and making things easier for newer players as well, has ended up frustrating a ton of the game's richest and most committed players. SuperCell should know by now not to bite the hand that feeds them, But when they're constantly devaluing things in the game, it can definitely feel like a kick in the teeth to players who spent far more time and money than the players who upgrade later on and get the exact same outcome. Annoying and demotivating, the minority percentage of Clash of Clans' audience who are responsible for most of the game's revenue is a super risky idea, and I fear that over the next couple of years we could see increasing numbers of long-term SuperCell fans finally saying enough is enough and quitting. But what do you think? Has SuperCell gotten too greedy? Or do you think it's reasonable to provide such a big advantage to paying players? Let me know down below, and be sure to subscribe for more gaming and business related content just like this.